Chi Cheng, bassist of the Deftones, was hospitalized and is reportedly in a coma after he was involved in a car accident.
Chi Cheng of the metal band Deftones was involved in a car accident on Monday, November 3rd, after he and his sister were leaving the memorial service of their older brother.
The Deftones had been working on their upcoming album, Eros, which was scheduled to be released in 2009.
When asked for comment, Deftones frontman Chino Moreno said, "Chi is one of the strongest people I know, and I am praying that his strength will get him through this."
Let's get this straight. After approximately a decade of relationship nightmares and drug addiction spanning 3 records, depending on when you want to start counting, Deftones reignited their bond, had a reinvigorated sound for Eros, their new project, and then bassist Chi Cheng went into a coma following a car accident. When drummer Abe Cunningham and vocalist Chino Moreno heard about it, they immediately dismissed it until their phones were flooded with the same message. That night, the whole band went up there and saw him, Moreno said to Revolver magazine. He was really banged up. It was crazy to see him like that. It was a lot to take in. At that point, I couldn't tell if he was there or not. Nobody really knew if he was going to make it a day or 2 or through the night. He's hooked up to every machine imaginable. His skull is removed. It's insane, Cunningham added. You don't think in 1,000 years you would ever see anyone that you love in that position. Why can't these guys ever catch a fucking break? They were on the verge of breaking up, then they put in the work to get clean, then they put the broken marriages behind them just to have another seismic change that threatened the band? After Chi was hospitalized, Deftones called up their old friend Sergio Vega from Quicksand to fill in on bass duties in January 2009, just as he did for the Black Sabbath Pantera tour in February 1999 when Chi sustained a staph infection on his foot. Of Sergio's initial 1999 stint in Deftones, guitarist Steph Carpenter said to Music Radar, "We gave him a call and he came out and learned our entire set in 24 hours. It was as if he was in our band the entire time. So when the accident happened, once we gave thought as to who we should call, Sergio was the dude." In the Eros chapter of this series, my source mistakenly shared the year as 1992 instead of 1999. Sorry about that, but if that was true, that would have been pretty epic. Touring with Pantera on the Black Sabbath reunion tour? That early in your career? I mean, Adrenaline wasn't even out yet. Anyways, it was natural for questions to be asked about the fate of Eros. But there would be no answers, not yet anyway. "We were about 70 to 75% finished with Eros," said Carpenter. "Musically, we were completely finished with that one. We were just waiting for Chino to finish the vocals, and I'd say he was more than half done." Deftones played their first show without Chi in a decade at the Bamboozle Left Festival on April 4, 2009. With Sergio in the lineup, the band played 26 dates in 2009 according to Concert Archives, with the 2 final shows of that year being Chi Cheng's benefit concert on November 19 and 20 at Avalon in Hollywood. Meanwhile, the band had spent 4 to 6 months not writing anything after Chi's accident. Thus, a decision had to be made. On June 23, 2009, Deftones announced that Eros would be delayed indefinitely. As we neared completion on Eros, we realized that this record doesn't best encompass and represent who we are currently as people and as musicians. And although those songs will see the light of day at some point, we collectively made the decision that we needed to take a new approach, and with Chi's condition heavy on our minds while doing so. We needed to return to the studio to do what we felt was right artistically. Our inspiration and unity as a band is stronger than it has ever been before, and we needed to channel that energy into our music and deliver to our fans what you rightfully deserve, the best Deftones record that we can make. Again, it was natural that people were saddened by this, on top of Chi's uncertain condition, and it certainly didn't help that the band called Eros, quote, the best record we've ever written. And it definitely didn't help when they said that the songs, quote, will see the light of day at some point. Nevertheless, the decision was clear. It was time for a new album, an album that better represented the current evolution of Deftones. After deciding to put Eros on hiatus and not talking music for months, the band came together to discuss the future of Deftones. Vocalist Chino Moreno stated, we were sitting down and it was weird because all of our gear was set up like Chi's bass, everything was set up in a circle. That room was exactly the way we left it when we were working last. We started talking. We spent probably about an hour or two just sitting there talking about Chi, telling stories from our first days meeting him to where we were at that moment. At that point, instead of taking the conversation over to, so what do you want to do now? Everyone just sort of walked over to their gear like natural, and we just started playing. And at that moment, we started writing what would become Diamond Eyes. To produce the record, Deftones fans assumed the return of Terry Date, since he was behind so much of Deftones' formative and favorite albums. Not to mention, he was producing Eros before it was shelved. Then there were other fans who were finally digesting Saturday Night Wrist well enough to consider another go-around with producer Bob Ezrin, but Steph Carpenter shared why the band shut down such a notion. For our last couple of records, the people that surrounded us had no confidence in Chino's hit songwriting abilities, so they were always trying to hook him up with hit songwriters and producers. He ended up meeting Nick Raskulinecz, who turned out to be an awesome dude. When Chino brought Nick in to meet us, we thought he was great. Did you catch that? Steph mentioned the producers of the last couple of records didn't have confidence in Chino, but that would be Bob Ezrin and Terry Date. And we know it ain't Terry, so Steph must be talking about Bob. Thus, Nick Raskulinecz was hired to produce the 6th studio Deftones album. He was already a fan of the band, which came in handy when it came time to get down to business. Steph, Nick doesn't come in and try to make a band something we're not. He was one of us and his instrument was the SSL. That's his solid state logic console. He just wants the band to be the best at what they are and do their best. He wasn't trying to get us to write hit songs, whatever those are. This approach helped Sergio Vega to adapt even quicker to the band. He had already played with them live and jammed privately, but to now record with Deftones might have been more daunting. However, thanks to Raskulinetz's personal touch, Vega felt right at home. He knew what the band was about and he didn't want to change us. He'd even pull me aside and hum quicksand riffs, so that made me feel very comfortable with him right away. The process of recording the album went about as seamless as one would expect given Raskulinetz's deference for the band. Deftones would pretty much jam together, sometimes demo a song, but Nick would hit record, listen to the playback, and point out the golden ideas that the band had struck. It was all about capturing energy and a new dynamic in the band. I'm not saying that egotistically, said Sergio, but I think everybody was feeling very positive and full of spirit. We were all psyched to be playing together, and that translated into a lot of cool music. Our whole MO was come in, play, listen, play some more, listen. The process was gradual but intense, but always exciting. There was an underlying sense of urgency which, in a funny way, kind of helped me to come up with stuff. I had to get creative, and I had to do it fast. What Sergio is referencing here is the fact that Warner Brothers was due a Deftones record, perhaps even overdue since Eros was projected to be released in 2009. But obviously, given the circumstances, Deftones needed more time, but they wouldn't be given the luxury of a year or 2 or 3 to get it done. Although we did use a different producer, the process itself was pretty similar to what we've always done, said Steph. The only thing that was different in a big way was that we didn't go in thinking, hey, we've got as much time as we want. We'd already made an album and put it on the back burner. Now we had to crank it out, so to speak. Time was of the essence. We were super focused. How focused were Deftones? According to Revolver magazine, all 11 tracks of what would become Diamondize were complete in 2 months. When talking to Noise Creep, vocalist Chino Moreno stated that recording was complete in a mere month. And according to guitarist Steph Carpenter, when talking to Music Radar, writing was quick. Quote, "We had something like 8 brand new songs down in 2 weeks." Comparing that to the years it took to demo songs via Pro Tools and record in multiple studios in the US, Deftones really had changed, but a large part of that quick turnaround time was Nick Raskulinecz, who Steph had nothing but glowing recommendations for. If you want to make a great record, do it with Nick. The guy definitely knows how to motivate musicians, keep them focused, and make them feel like what they're doing matters. As seamless and streamlined of a process recording Diamondize was, it was still bittersweet, of course. The band had created an album they were proud of, and with an old friend in Sergio Vega on bass and a new friend in Nick Raskulinecz on production. However, with the absence of Chi Cheng and the uncertainty of what his fate would be, the zeal of success was somewhat tempered. Nevertheless, Diamondize is a testament to the band's love for Chi. A quote from the band's statement to shelf Eros temporarily sums it up perfectly. "The decision to hold off on releasing Eros has no connection with Chi's condition or anything associated. This was and is purely a creative decision by the band to write, record, and deliver an amazing product. As a result, we feel like this is the best record we've ever written." They're talking about Eros at that point. "And although Chi is not playing bass with us, his presence is dramatically felt in our hearts and on our minds every day when we step into that studio. And you will feel it in the music." And boy, they weren't kidding. Diamondize. Deftones' 6th studio album was released on May 4, 2010. But Diamondize, the title track of the album, kicks in the most punishing way. Steph especially isn't playing around, as you appreciate the depth of what a bar chord from an H-string ESP can deliver to the fucking soul. Now I know technically it's Frank who gets us going, but he began with false intentions. Those spacey ephemeral notes were so misleading for the gut punch that came right after. The album came out a few days before I had my final exam, and my friends gave me the earphones and said, "Just listen to this." I said, "It's the new Deftones, isn't it?" They lied and said it wasn't. So I'm listening to all this spacey ass shit and I'm thinking like, what is this? And luckily I stopped right before Steph played, because I'm telling you, if I had actually heard it, I wouldn't have studied shit. As a matter of fact, the only thing I would have been studying was Diamondize. So when I eventually listened to it after exams were over, I was like, okay, I get why you lied to me. As far as opening tracks go, it is a killer and one of the best. Also, I know Chino at this point is not necessarily writing about himself. However, time will see us realign. I don't know, man. How can any Deftones fan who knew of Chi's condition not immediately read into such a line? I mean, come on. Of all the songs in Deftones' catalog, probably one of the ones I sleep on the most is Royal. It's hella catchy, fun, and causes one to realize that the band is not about to throw a pity party for themselves and their fallen friend. They're writing something to celebrate their friendship. In fact, drummer Abe Cunningham said the first song they wrote for the album became what we now know as Royal. And there's more bounce per ounce when command control sets in. In fact, it's probably the funkiest track of the project. Steph Carpenter said, "We didn't want to make a downer album. What would be the point in that?" Big facts. And it's just as Chino screamed, it's how you wear it, not what it is. Also, when you consider that Deftones are definitely not strangers to making a depressing record such as self-titled largely was, it illustrates the importance of actually being more upbeat at that time. The band had been intimate with struggle during the dark days, but they knew a return to such a time wasn't an option, which makes the sexy stylistic switch of You've Seen the Butcher so much more astounding. Originally titled Nylons and Suspenders, Chino explained to Spin magazine, quote, musically it's something that we haven't done before. It's very sludgy, like a chainsaw type of riff, but very slow. I shouldn't say this, but it's clunky in an awesome way. Now, the word clunky definitely carries a negative connotation, but if I were to offer a synonym, I guess it'd be mechanical, which is also not very charitable. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, this is the perfect track to consider for a slasher flick. The twist of metal and erotica makes this track one of a kind. Now, I'm not sure when I stopped listening to Beauty School, and I can't remember why, but it's not because I don't like it. To be very honest with you, it's maybe my favorite track on Diamond Eyes. I guess the sentimentality of it all is sometimes that overwhelming for me. It's not hauntingly beautiful like Entombed or depressingly beautiful like Le Merle. It's just beautiful, like a hopeful kind of beautiful. This track for me has been the blueprint of the Deftones ballad. I don't know if it was written before the other ballad on this album that we'll get to in a moment, but since it was the first one I heard, I can't help but note the structure of the track again and again and again. It's a winning formula that, drives me crazy, drives me wild every time I hear it. Also, shout out to Sergio. He's been killing it thus far. Really liked his contribution on Beauty School, but Prince is when he truly takes center stage. He, Abe, and Frank combined for a song that over time has grown on me more and more. My brethren used to swear how good this song was, but I don't know, it's like I wasn't sophisticated enough to appreciate it yet. I don't know. It's almost like a brand new track for me because I used to skip it so much back in the day. Also, Chino's vocal fry in the chorus really does something for me. Speaking of Chino, one of his favorite tracks was Rocket Skates, which he described to Spin as a heavier tune with beautiful yet violent imagery that has a fantasy vibe similar to Knife Party. Look, I'm not gonna tell the guy who wrote the music about his music, so instead I'll just suggest that merely saying guns, razors, knives, fuck with me is not enough to conjure thoughts of Knife Party, I'm sorry. But it is kind of ironic that I listen to Prince more nowadays, but Rocket Skates less. The clunkiness that worked in You've Seen the Butcher sort of kind of shows in the verses of Rocket Skates. But, as good as the song is, I do find that the verses are the weakest part of the track, my opinion. Everything else is Cash Money, to be fair. It's just the verses kind of now actually feel mechanical in a less flattering way. But all is forgiven when Sex Tape kicks in. Truly an immaculate track that inspired the shoegaze metal combo that we will never escape for as long as we live. Not to mention the Tumblr gift sets of the music video that normies still have no idea where it came from. It's the sophistication of the track that has it at such a legendary status in the Deftones discography. With a duration of 4 minutes, where the chorus is only played twice, it is a highly addictive yet deeply nourishing track. So from the dizzying heights of Sex Tape, we get grounded with Risk, which sounds really oxymoronic, but whatever. Well, yeah, kind of. But anyway, I mean it in a good way nevertheless, because It is a simple track that kind of reminds me of like a partly cloudy Saturday afternoon right before evening hits. It's not doing too much. It's doing the perfect amount of much because it really does something for me. Perfect placement in the record and overall just a solid track. Chino's melodies on this record have been quite impressive, and the streak continues on 976 Evil. His verse is so light, playful even. It feels like twilight is setting in, but simultaneously we're still in that afternoon heat. You know, come to think of it, it's probably my memories playing in my mind, right? But more to the point, it's a sweet track with a hint of anticipation. So I gaze in your eyes, and I wonder, can you take me on? Your haze that I'm under, come and wake me up. I do very little singing about myself on this record, said Chino. I love songs where I can totally take myself out of being human. I can sing about really odd things, and they don't necessarily have to pertain to me at all. It paints a picture. Those are the kind of lyrics I grew up with, like The Cure. Really visual images and no storytelling. And yet, when you listen to the final track of Diamond Eyes, This Place is Death, the images Chino creates necessitates the creation of a plot. He gives the visuals, the band sets the tone, and these meaning-making machines called our minds get to work on crafting our private music videos. Throughout this album, Chino presented a hurricane of diamonds, pornographic chainsaw massacres, princes draped in black and gold, cruising after hours until the waves collide, gazes that lull one into a haze so strong one begs rescue, and now nocturnal dreamscapes of discovery. I really do believe that the band would not be satisfied if they made an album of sadness for Chi Cheng's comatose condition. Just a few years ago, some members lost their marriages, many were losing themselves to addiction, and the band almost lost each other. Tragedy struck yet again, but they refused to let that define their lives. They chose to write their own story and a killer album to reintroduce themselves to the world. To many of us, it's clear Deftones carried Chi in their hearts since the car accident. Revolver magazine ranked Diamond Eyes as the best album of the decade. Naturally, the album was dedicated to Chi. Chi, we missed you dearly in the making of this record. You're in our minds always. Hope to talk to you again soon, buddy. Love, Chino, Steph, Frank, and Abe. As excellent as the band were, producer Nick Raskulinecz genuinely has a decent shout for MVP, as he introduced an approach that helped the band become organized and focused in a way they had never been before. Steph had sang Nick's praises to Music Radar, but when noting that the story of Diamond Eyes was a rebirth for Deftones and a modern-day tale of triumph over adversity, Steph had this to say. It's a duality for us. On the one hand, we're dealing with the fact that our friend isn't with us and his life has been forever altered. On the other, we're all together and we're enjoying life to the fullest and getting on with things, which is all you can do, really. There does not appear to be a specific reason the album was titled Diamond Eyes. Indeed, even the album art of the statuesque owl was a striking image that pulled on something either accidentally or intuitively. But what we do know is that Chino described Diamond Eyes as a more optimistic and wide-eyed project. The motif of the white owl serves as a stark contrast to the black night, as well as the ability to navigate through a lack of light. Whether subconscious or unconscious, that is exactly what Deftones had to do as they navigated a new sound in a new era without one of their best friends by their side. But who knew that through such great tragedy could emerge such great triumph? So remember, buckle up for Chi, and thank you for watching.